Well, as you may or may not know, I have a Harley Davidson golf cart, 1985, and I actually also found out, I can't believe I didn't see this, but this is also a converted four-wheeler. This used to be a three-wheeled golf cart. It used to have the handle there. I don't understand why I haven't recognized the signs, but someone put this gearbox and steering wheel on it, and it's now a four-wheeled golf cart. But, anyways, that's not the problem. I don't know if you guys seen the video I posted months ago, last year actually, but I blew it up. We had it up at a campground, and I used it to get around from place to place. It's a big campground. Excuse the door, the wind's blowing, and the latch broke on it. But I used to drive from place to place up at this campground, up by Lake Ontario, and well, it finally I guess the one ring broke and got caught up in the head. Let me show you why. Well, this cylinder here is so worn that there was a lip in here. I removed this lip on here, but it was so worn that the rings are paper thin, and I did sand off the lip up there. I didn't bore the cylinder yet. I know it's kind of worn out, but I'm not going to bore the cylinder. I did hone it though. You can see it's a little uneven there. You can even see that it didn't go fully deep where the lip was, but I removed that lip. But I did hone it, and the reason why I removed that lip is because I'm putting in a slightly oversized piston. This was 40 over to begin with, and now I'm putting in 50 over. So you don't want to do that, but this was so bad that I did that. I don't have the money to rebore the cylinder, so I just done my work and my homework carefully, and I measured it out, and I figured it'll be fine with the 40 over. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to take a razor blade and we're going to scrape off some of this old gasket. What I got here is the piston. But did I say 40 over? I mean 50 over. It is 40 over. This is a 40 over piston. It's a few thousandths above 40 over. Don't ask me how I got a hold of that. I actually found a good website. Yeah, he gave me quite some packaging stuff in here. I didn't even notice that when I opened up the box. It wasn't until I cleaned it up later on because my mom was bitching because I left it on the table. I installed those brand new lights over there, and still I'm not having enough lighting, but it's much better in here. I guess it's because of that giant thing there. So I got my rings and my gaskets. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by cleaning this off, and then I'm going to show you guys got to check ring gap. You never put an engine together with just throw the rings on and put it in. Got to check ring gap. It's always very important because if you don't check ring gap, it'll seize up. But I'll get to that in a minute. So I got that all cleaned off pretty well. This is what I use, gasket scraper here. So just make sure you get it all off, because if you have any gasket material left on there, what's going to happen is that gasket's not gonna seat on there properly because it's sitting over top of the gasket material, and then there's little spaces in between there, and then you'll lose pressure through your crankcase if it's a two-stroke, or oil if it's a four, and you know that's not good. So you don't want that, especially for a rebuild motor. So always make sure your gasket material, your old gasket material, is all cleaned off. So I put this wrist pin in here. Actually, you know what? Never mind. Let's move on to the cylinder here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the ring gap. So here's the rings, and what I do is I stick the ring down inside the cylinder, and can't do it with one hand, but I'll stick the rings down in the cylinder, take the new piston, or I guess you can use the old piston too. Just take the top of it and push it down so that way the gasket sits in flush. You take a feeler gauge and you keep trying out different feeler gauges until you find the one that fits, and that's your gap. And then just measure that up with the one spec. If there's no gap or the gap is too little, you need to follow the end of the rings. This one I'm going to check it anyways, but I highly doubt I'm going to have to do any filing since the cylinder, although it looks new and honed, but it's got quite a bit of wear to it. But like I said, I didn't have the money to really bore this or replace it. So that little space there is your ring gap. Now you want to take a feeler gauge and you want to measure that out. I think mine's going to be just a little over what it should be at, but that's okay. Like I said, I'm just going to see if this works. I don't drive it much. I'm just get from place to place up in at a campsite in New York, so we'll figure that out. So I used this blade, and I found that the .30 blade fit in, which is it. Yes, it is a little excessive. I think the max they say it should be around before you're supposed to get it bored or whatever, or step it to the next size up, is like 20.025. For the 3-ring, it's a 3-ringed piston too. So I'm also going to test all the other rings, but I'm not going to show it on camera. I'm just going to do the one, and then just make sure you do it to all 3. Just because one matches up doesn't mean all will be good. So and like I said, if it's too much of a gap, you want to file down the end of those rings. Now, what I'm looking at is not this outer section. This is only because it's 2-stroke and has the ring alignment pins on it. I'm looking at the tiny little gap right in between there. See that? That's the gap right there. So, yep, that's the one you want to measure it at. So it's about to get to this wrist pin here. What I actually did is, this is not part of the assembly here. Let me show you. You see these are actually just rubber O-rings I put on there. That's all I had when I was taking this apart. The reason why I put these on here is because these got loose needle bearings in them. And what actually can happen is these needle bearings can fall out. So I left this in here. If the needle bearings fall out when you're installing them or anything, or you just need to get them back in, you just coat the inside with a little bit of grease. They'll stick in there. So let's see if they'll fall out. And if they fall out, I'll have to make sure I get them all. But then if they do, I'll just coat the inside with a little bit of grease. If they don't fall out, just put oil in it and stuff. Once the wrist pin's in, just put a little oil around the wrist pin and do it like that, because grease isn't the proper lube to lubricate this part here, the rod, end of the rod there. But you know what? I guess you kind of have to. It's not going to hurt anything, so it's like assembly lube. I'm also going to take my new gasket and put it around here. The piston should fit through here, but I'll just put it on either way because some engines it won't. So just put that through there, and then all you do is we're just going to stick the connecting rod, the wrist pin through here. Just double check whenever you take that off, make sure all your bearings are there. They are, like you said, you see there's nothing holding those in there. They're just sitting in there. So just make sure you got them all. And then we're going to take our new wrist pin, take the piston. We're going to stick the wrist pin through the piston. I also put the rings on already. I'll explain a little bit what I did for those. And then we're just going to stick the wrist pin halfway through till it just lines up with that, and then we just set the piston on. And there's also, you see how there's the numbers and then there's the EX stand for there? The EX stands for the exhaust. You want the exhaust to face downward. So then you want that little hole to face on the top. So wrist pin's halfway in now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my finger in oil and I'm going to rub it around that wrist pin or inside here. I'm going to do that so I don't disturb these bearings because I always get real nervous with them. I hate when they fall out. So I push the wrist pin in. And if you take a look at this piston, it can slide from side to side. There's a lot of slap on there, but it's the right diameter and everything, and it matches up with the other piston. I think the other piston did that too. I looked already. If you're not sure about some, always you look up diagrams, schematics. This thing has everything it needs. There's no spacers or anything that goes in between there. And usually it's normal if the piston's able to do that because the cylinder is holding the piston straight either way. So don't worry about that if that is. Just if it does concern you, and you know, even if it doesn't, you know, never hurts to print out schematics and stuff. Just look it up. Alright, so tune to part 2. We're going to put in the circlips, and I'm going to put this jug back on. So stay tuned.